John 10:40 to 11:46. He went away again, Jesus, of course, across the Jordan to the place where John had been baptizing at first. And there he remained. And many came to him, and they said, John did no sign, but everything that John said about this man was true, and many believed in him there. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with the ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, This illness does not lead to death, for it is for the glory of God, so that the Son of Man may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, Let us go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again? Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in a day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. After saying these things, he said to them, Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus spoke of his death, but now Jesus spoke of his death, but they thought that it meant taking rest and sleep. So again, we have misunderstanding. Then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died, and for your sake I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, Let us also go, that we might die with him. Now, what
does it mean by the twin?
Maybe, yeah. That's the most obvious option. But some say maybe he looked like someone. I don't know. Maybe it was a nickname, but yeah, he probably had a twin. We don't know who that twin was. We don't know for sure if he had a twin, but that's the most. It might have been. Some people think it was Andrew, but there's no inkling of that in the Bible, so I'm not gonna venture out from that. Now, when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. That's an important thing to remember. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brothers. What have I told you about that term, the Jews? Yeah, that are opposed to Jesus, right? So makes sense that they were a little afraid to go, right? So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out and met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, Your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? Jesus said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, The teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. Now, Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out. They followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Now, when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. So the Jews said, See how he loved him. But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha said to Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said these things, he cried out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, Unbind him and let him go. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what he did, believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. So he's very close to Jerusalem, which is dangerous for him. And then these Jews, some of those who were there, were amazed about what he did, but some went off to the Jewish leadership to narc on Jesus, basically. So we'll start with this first thing. This won't take very long. So the first thing it tells us is that he was in Perea for a while, near where John the Baptist was baptizing on the other side of the Jordan. And at this point, John the Baptist is dead. And it's not long before his crucifixion. We can't know for sure when all of this happened, but the marker is sometime between Hanukkah in December and the spring. So it's close. To his crucifixion. So it's on the other side of the Jordan, and we see this fruit of John's ministry because there are people there who believe in him because of what John had said. So we see that his ministry is still having fruit coming from that. And so the lesson for us in this all is that what we're called to do is to plant seeds. We can't, and by planting seeds, I mean our job is to tell other people about Jesus. That's planting the seed. How they react to that is not our concern. They might believe in Christ, they may not, but we are to be faithful to tell others about Jesus. It's their decision whether they decide to trust Christ or not. We're just to plant the seed, and we've talked about this before. We have to be faithful in planting the seed and then cultivating and watering the seed. But God is the only one that can bring the harvest. So now we're going to go. This is what I was just talking about. The fruit of John's ministry, we see that in this. And then the lessons for us, we must sow and cultivate the seed, but God gives the increase. And we may never see the results of our labor. We may never know if that person came to Christ or or if someone didn't. But the only thing we need to do is be faithful in telling people about Jesus. So now we're in Bethany. And Bethany is very close to Jerusalem, which shows us that Jesus is in some danger already because he's very close to Bethany, a couple of miles away. Um, and it would be an easy walk for the ancient people that walked everywhere. So it says here, what I'm supposed to say to you is if we assume that Jesus stayed in Perea for several weeks, I'm not going to assume. It doesn't tell us how long it was. All we know for sure is it's sometime between the Feast of Lights, the Feast of Dedication, and Palm Sunday. And that's as close as we're going to get. Now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ancient tombs and burial customs so you can understand as we go through this. So, in ancient times in Israel, they had the tombs were like caves, and they were hewn out of rock. And it had two, so if you went inside, on the outside, there would be a low overhead, and it would go down a little bit, and then there'd be a trench there where they would roll a stone down into that trench. And then when you get into the tomb, there were two rooms inside. There was a room up front and a room in the back. And in the front room, it would have three sides, maybe four sides, where there would be built-in stone benches. And so when somebody died, they would bury them with, they'd put spices on, and they would put linen around it, kind of like a mummification, if you will. Now they did that not. Like now we have people that are embalmed, and it slows down the process of decay. It didn't really slow down the process of decay. It just made it not smell so bad. It still smelled, but it not so bad. And so then they lay the person on that bench, and about a year later, when all of the soft tissue had decayed, they'd go back in and they would take the bones of the person and put it in what's called an ossuary, a bone box. And it wasn't just a single bone box. It was multiple people in a family would be in that same box. So and so then they take that box and take it into the second room where there were niches in the wall, and they put the bone box into the niche. I might be getting ahead of ourselves. I don't know if it's in this year or if it's in another year I talk about this. But a number of years ago, they found the ossuary of Caiaphas, this high priest, when Jesus was crucified. And it had his name on it, and it said he was the high priest, and it had the exact right years for Jesus's for when Jesus was around. So you and in the box was an adult man, an adult woman, and several children. We have, and we're going to talk about this more and more in both in junior and senior year. That gives us proof of what we believe in, and that the Bible is true. It's not a fairy tale. So yeah, yeah, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to show you an actual tomb. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, This illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. So this is it's a reconstruction of a tomb, a first century tomb. It's not an actual one. You see the stone there, and that's the entrance into the first part um, of the tomb. So and then this is real. This is the oldest house excavated in Bethany, and it dates to Jesus' time. Some people say that this is Lazarus's house. I don't think we can know that for sure, but it might be. It's possible that this is the house that Jesus was. And the doorways were very low because the people were short in those days. The average male, I think, was 5'2" or 5'4". So the pictures of Jesus as a 6-foot American is not accurate. He probably was short, dark hair, big nose, quite likely, because it says he looked like any other Jew. Let's talk about the ways of God, and then we'll be done for today. So God's ways are not always our ways. This truth is taught in verses 1 through 6. When Jesus doesn't come immediately. So let me ask you some questions. Did Jesus love Lazarus? Yes, he did. Did he know that Lazarus would die? Yes, he did. Did he go immediately to save Lazarus?
No.
Why? Why did he wait? He wasn't what? He wasn't moved?
God wanted the Spirit.
Oh, by the Spirit too? Yeah. Yeah.
As it said once, they had said something about Lazarus, that he had already died. It said, then the Spirit of
Yeah. Yeah, that's a different thing. I'll give you a spoiler alert. He was angry. Yeah, that's what that means. I'll do that in the insert. Yes.
The city is
Right now.
everybody's up.
Okay. Let's go out in the hall. We've still got about 10 minutes, so yeah, God's ways are not always our ways. Sometimes we can't understand what He's doing. One thing I've said, I've heard that I quote pretty often is, "You never know what God's doing when we think He's not looking or not looking, and He isn't. He isn't going. You never know what God's doing when we think He isn't." And he is listening, and he is at work. It isn't always what we want. One of my pet peeves is when people say God didn't answer my prayer. Yes, he did. He said no. He said no, and that's an answer, right? If you ask me right now if you could go get a drink of water, and I said no, would you say, why didn't you answer? Because I did. Because I did.
The answer is no.
The answer is no. Yeah. So we don't always understand it, but in the long run, we do see why God was doing what He was doing. And we know that this is from Romans, that for those who love God, all things work together for the good. And then Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 is very well known. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. So I might have told you this story before, but I'm going to tell it again because it was a time when I didn't understand. There are a lot of times when I don't understand. I was in eighth grade, excuse me. It was spring of my eighth grade year, and my dad picked me up from mission, which was weird because he didn't usually pick me up from mission. I usually took the bus or somebody else picked me up. So we got in the car, we started driving. Oh, I got to tell you something first about this. At that time in Nebraska, ladies, this is going to upset you. Girls could not do interscholastic sports. They could have intramurals. They could compete within their own school, but they couldn't play other schools. So that plays into this story. So we're driving away, and my father, who called, I have 3 sisters, no brothers, and he called us all sis. Sometimes big sis, sometimes little sis, depending where you are in the lineup. But he said, sis, I have something to tell you. We're moving to Brussels. And I got terribly angry at him and told him he was ruining my life. And he tried to mollify me by saying, well, in Europe, you can play interscholastic sports.
Were you carving?
Yes, I was. I absolutely was. I did a lot of carving. So I was angry at my parents, and I didn't want to go. And what is weird about that is that 2 years later, my father says, I'm retiring. We're moving back to Nebraska. And you would think I would be like, yay, no, I did the same thing. I was angry at him for making me move again. When I look back on that, obviously I was immature, but also I am so grateful for my upbringing now because of what it's afforded me. I'm not afraid to go anywhere. I'm not afraid to go to Zambia. I'm not afraid to meet new people. I make friends easily. And all of that is because my parents drug me all around the world my whole life. Every 1.8 years. So I lived in Seoul, South Korea, and in Belgium. Those are the 2 out of the United States. I've lived in Virginia, California, Nebraska, New Jersey, McLean, Virginia 3 times. So, yeah. I on average, I moved every 1.8 years from the time I was born.
This day?
Yeah, you mean like
And
Well, from the time.
your dad
Let me say
retired.
this. No. From the time I was born until I came here. Until I came here.
When did you come?
In 1985. Now I lived here before, but I've been here continuously since 1985. So thanks for helping me with that.
I just think it's
Why is
Okay.
surprise you?
So yeah, they're always what's best for us. We just sometimes don't see that until later. And now we're gonna talk about the disciples a little bit. Then after this, he said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." And the disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in a day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. After saying these things, he said to them, Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to waken him. The disciples said to him, Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he meant taking rest and sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, Lazarus has died, and for your sake I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him. So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, Let us go that we may die with him. Did the bell ring?
We got like 30 seconds.
Okay, well, that last part, we can't tell if it's sarcastic or if he means it. We just don't have any context clues for that. But the dying part, yeah.
Okay.